And you're using that Lew's reel?
This is the brand new Lew's reel here. This is their new flagship reel.
What's the gear ratio on that?
And gear ratio on this one is a 6/8 to 1.
So that's a good ground, like it's fast enough to get them out of there.
Yeah, it's plenty fast enough, you know, if need be, but at the same time, you know, for certain applications, you don't want something that's an 8 to 1, or, you know, they've even got 9 to 1. You don't want it that blazing fast. So it's kind of middle of the road, and that's why I like to choose that gear ratio. But man, the carbon fiber handle, the new Lew's EVA foam, and these things have like cork on the outside of them. Really just a super good looking reel. But the other thing about this is the weight. Don't remember exact, but it's sticking in my mind like 5.3 ounces. So I mean, this thing is like holding nothing.
And you're using what, a Sunline on that, and what, a fluorocarbon? Or?
Yes, this is Sunline fluorocarbon. On this one, I've got 12-pound test on it in the Sniper, in the clear.
But the biggest thing that I pay attention to is our tides. One of the things that I found is when I fish at high tide, the fish will take to a moving bait better. If I'm bumping it off the rocks, or if I'm bumping off of a laydown, because at low tide, a lot of times those fish will move off of those places and they're less active. That's times when I find that a shaky head or a drop shot or dragging a jig are better techniques, slower moving baits and finesse. So right now, of course, you know, I have my Humminbird 360, my range set at 80 feet.
Right.
And so each ring is good for 20 feet. So basically you got 20, 40, 60, 80.
Okay.
So that kind of gives you, you know, your casting area, if you will. Now, over here in front of this opening and sort of around this bend a little bit, we're gonna see a bunch of structure. You can see some of it starting right here. So let's there's different angles here we're gonna see. But you see these shadows being created?
Yep.
This is all big pile of junk piles. You know, there's laydowns in here. There's debris. There's all kinds of stuff. You can see it here. If you look at my rod tip, I'm stuck in it already. And just by me coming here and just fishing as I normally would, I found this stuff.
What a better image than the ranch spotlight. It's night and day.
It's unbelievable.
Night and day difference.
So right now I'm looking at this edge, you know, which is our wall, and then I'm looking at this debris that's right here is creating a shadow, and you know it allows me to make pinpoint casts, you know, right to what it is that I'm trying to fish here. And these are the kind of places that you'd want to look for fish on a low tide. So we have a dead slack low tide, but I'm going to try, you know, casting my jig out and bumping over some of this structure down here to see if we can come up. Just popped right off just by going on the other side of it.
Yeah, a lot of times people get worried about that when they get all hung up with the jigs and the rocks and laydowns, but if a lot of times you can boomerang that right off, or bow and arrow it off, or whatever you want to call that. Sure. And you know, and if it doesn't pop off, just by changing the angle of the boat just slightly, you can still stay away from the spot, just like Mike did, and it'll come right off. You just have to, you know, develop a feel for that and practice it like anything else.
Coming off our point here, it's like kind of like a big flat, and then you've got two big giant, you know, rocks or pieces of structure. You can see the shadow behind it. That's how big it is.
Yep.
So you know, if I'm looking right off the right of my my electronics here, or off my boat, I'm looking at about 25 to 30 feet away,
30 feet.
And that can allow me to sort of cast about that far away and drag my jig back until I hit that structure that's offshore.
Yeah, that is a much better setup.
Well, here it is right here. I'm on it now. See my rod tip bent? Just coming up over it. It says now I can, you know, I can turn my trolling motor so that I can, you know, look at that at 12 o'clock.
Right.
Look, and once I'm on it, there you go. Look, here I'm stuck. I'm on it now. you know, I can target those individual items. I want to try to stay off the bank right now because we have a really low tide, lower than normal. So I just wanted to hit a couple spots that you know, have debris that's off the shoreline. I did get a bite here at the first stop, and something went off with my jig, and I had him stuck for a minute, and it popped off. So
you said it, like if you were say pre-fishing for a tournament, or you were in a tournament, what you would have done there was probably just use a light line technique. You'd have used a shaky head or something like that on this type of a tide.
Sure.
So right now we're just going to run to a different spot and see if they'll hit a crankbait and a jig. And
but with this low water still, I'm probably going to still finesse fish. But after I go through an area, sometimes if the water gets moving here for us, then I'll probably start throwing some moving baits.
Well, I just moved it so we could see the shoreline to 100 feet. I'm going to go back to view here, back to the menu, and I'm going to put it back to 80 feet. So that's a number that I feel like I can cast 80 feet. So if we're looking here now, if I take the front of my boat and I sort of, you know, put myself at 12 o'clock, you can see it sort of is a bend, a drop off, and there's a lay down on that area.
now here's Mike just picked this fish up. I honestly didn't have the camera on because I was shocked. We were talking about the one thing different, isolated cover, and you've got a section like this, a great big seawall with pylons on it, and it's all the same, but there was one thing different. And when using that Humminbird 360, he says, now you see, here's a laydown. And that's the one thing that's different.
Yeah, that's I was just talking to Mike here, and I basically just pointed out, you know, by looking at my 360, you know, I could come in here and I see a seawall that's full of pilings. Well, okay, well, you know, do you fish all the pilings? Well, sure you can. But the one thing that's different down this whole wall is that there's a single laydown that was right in this area. I saw it, I pinpointed it, I targeted it, I threw a drop shot right on top of it, and boom, there's a fish.
And that's the key here, really, is being able to maximize your time on the water. You have to fish every one of these pylons without being able to see that. And yet you've got a whole bay to cover and 5 rivers. And it's just not possible. You can spend a whole week and not really even touch some of the key spots. But with that 360 sonar, understanding what you see, you can come up along that seawall and pick it out just like Mike did and say, well, this is a great looking area, but I see the one thing that's different about it is it drops off a little bit here, or here's a rock, or like he said, here's a little laydown on it. And you come right in and pick out the key areas to fish in there and really maximize your time.
That's it. Well, you know, the bass really tend to like the one thing different. So, you know, one of the nice things about having a seawall is all the same. So if you can find one piece of structure on it different, you can see the debris, it's creating shadows, the stuff that's kind of all far right here and behind us. And so, you know, I'm going to look to target cast, you know, to that debris that you're seeing that's off the shore. So with the casts kind of in this neighborhood here, and slow drags, you know, if they've pulled out here, and this is a good shaky head spot too. Hope this is the right kind. It feels good. Yet.
What type of line are you using there, Mike?
Now I have 8-pound trilene, 100% fluoro. Oh yeah. There she is. It's an offshore Humminbird 360 fish.
And that's just a little shaky head. What bait is that?
Yeah, just a little zoom finesse worm.
Yeah, I saw it's a pretty small little wormy, right?
Yeah, There she goes. So this here is a fish that you know, was caught about, I don't know, 100 yards offshore. I found some structure with my Humminbird 360, and these are the kind of quality fish that you can catch when you have the electronics to do so, and a little bit of time to look around.
And we're on the worst tides you could have. I mean,
Sure,
this is not a good
dead
tide.
low slack tide, and yeah, little finesse action, and there you go. It's a good fish. Sometimes I throw the drop shot, more specifically if I know I'm going to hang in a lot of debris. There's a lot of debris down here, so sometimes I can bring my bait to it and wiggle that little worm in front of their face and look for that bite.
I found that that drop shot works better when it's like debris or structure down there like you're talking about. But I think that shaky head, like especially on the Potomac, worked better when you were pitching it up on the docks or the seawall.
Of course, sure. There's definitely a time and place for everything. You can see just a minute ago, our boat was sitting in 12 to 15 feet of water. And right now, the front of my boat's at 5.
So that hole's definitely.
So it's basically we've got a point that's way out here with some debris on it, and with some deep water they can move up and down, and then on high tide you can find them over top of that metal barge up there.
We'll see.
Little bass.
Got a bass right off this point. Look at that.
The old Bill Lewis rattle trap.
That's just what we were talking about.
Yep.
How people just underutilize that rattle trap all times a year.
Yep.
Especially in shallow water, they don't want to throw it, but it's a bait to throw. Right here.
Yeah, right off the point.
No secret. It's just, bearing down.
They're set up. This has an arrow that has to point at 12 o'clock. If you go bopping down the lake and your head turns a little bit, and you put it back in. Now you're looking over here or over there. One of the things I do with setup is I make sure that when I have my trolling motor set where I normally have it, I always put it right here at 12 o'clock, right on top. This way here, when I put it in the water, I know that this is at 12 o'clock. Whereas some guys have it mounted, this here itself is mounted over here, or it's mounted over here. And when you go bumping down the lake, you don't know if it's exactly at 12 o'clock when you put it in.
Right.
Whereas if you set everything up and you have it set right 12, you could come before you launch it, you can look right over top and say, okay, I'm 12 o'clock, make sure you're tight. And the biggest thing that I pay attention to is our tides. One of the things that I found is when I fish at high tide, the fish will take to a moving bait better. If I'm bumping it off the rocks or if I'm bumping off of a laydown, because at low tide, a lot of times those fish will move off of those places and they're less active. That's times when I find that a shaky head or a drop shot or dragging a jig are better techniques, slower moving baits and finesse.
My range set at 80 feet.
Right.
And so each ring is good for 20 feet. So basically got 20, 40, 60, 80.
Okay.
So that kind of gives you, your casting area, if you will. Now, over here in front of this opening and sort of around the spend a little bit, we're gonna see a bunch of structure. You can see some of it starting right here. So let's
And it's not near.
and there's different angles here we're gonna see, but you see these shadows being created.
Yep.
This is all big pile of junk piles. There's laydowns in here. There's debris. There's all kinds of stuff. You can see it here. If you look at my rod tip, I'm stuck in it already. And just by me coming here and just fishing as I normally would, I found this stuff.
What a better image than the ranch spotlight. It's night and day.
It's unbelievable.
Night and day difference.
So right now I'm looking at this edge, which is our wall, and then I'm looking at this debris that's right here is creating a shadow, and it allows me to make pinpoint casts, right to what it is that I'm trying to fish here. And these are the kind of places that you'd want to look for fish on a low tide. So we have a dead slack low tide, but I'm going to try, casting my jig out and bumping over some of this structure down here. I want to try to stay off the bank right now because we have a really, really low tide, lower than normal.
So I just wanted to hit a couple spots that you know, have debris that's off the shoreline. I did get a bite here at the first stop, and something went off with my jig, and I had him stuck for a minute, and it popped off.
So you said, like, if you were say pre-fishing for a tournament, or you were in a tournament, what you would have done there was probably just use a light line technique. You'd have used a shaky head or something like that on this type of a tide.
Sure.
So right now we're just going to run to a different spot and see if they'll hit a crankbait and a jig. And
but with this low water still, I'm probably going to still finesse fish. But after I go through an area, sometimes if the water gets moving here for us, then I'll probably start throwing some moving baits.
got a bass right off this point. Look at that.
The old Bill Lewis rattle trap.
That's just what we were talking about.
Yep.
How you know, people just underutilize that rattle trap all times of year.
Yep.
Especially in shallow water, they don't want to throw it, but it's a bait to throw. There we go, on a chatterbait. So we were just looking, there's eelgrass in here and some other types of grass, and we were talking about that, where a couple different kinds of grass come together near a turn, a little drop off, some rocks, they've got wood cover.
Yeah, nice, you know, two and a half pounder. Not a giant,
But still, if it's a tough day, you had 5.
oh yeah, sure.
It always helps.
There she goes. So this here is a fish that you know, was caught about, I don't know, 100 yards offshore. I found some structure with my Humminbird 360, and these are the kind of quality fish that you can catch when you have the electronics to do so, and a little bit of time to look around.
And we're on the worst tides you could have. I mean,
Sure,
this
we got
is not a good
dead
tide.
low slack tide, and yeah, a little finesse action, and there you go. It's a good fish. One of the neat things I did here on my trolling motor, besides adding 2 extra straps, you know, when I get out in the big water, you know, Lake Erie or St. Clair or Champlain on a windy day, or even on the Potomac or Delaware River when you get wind against tide, you know, sometimes we're dealing with, you know, our trolling motors are really getting beat up here. So there's a company that sells this little bracket that attaches right here, but unfortunately on my boat, it would be in the way of the gunnel here. So what I actually did was, on the Minn Kota here with its normal bounce buster, I took the little cap off and I drilled and tapped for this piece that's down here. And so this way here, it locks right into place. So when I'm out running around, I deploy it down, it's rock solid. It's not going to go anywhere.
That's a real neat little trick.
Specifically, I'm using the Jackal Bling 55 this morning. Really nice motion. It smacks off the rocks and pilings really nice. And I've had a lot of big bites on this bait, you know, so I like to go ahead and start with something like that, something I have a lot of confidence in, you know, try to get a couple fish in the boat early. Also, this morning we're going to go ahead and start out with a jig on. When I'm at the Upper Bay, I almost always have a jig on. Any time of year, those big fish, I mean, they seem to not be able to resist, you know, a jig. You get that jig down around pilings on rocks and real subtle movements, you tap pilings, brush piles, you know, those big fish just really love it. I've had a really good year this year on the bigger fish. I weighed in a lot over 5'5", 5'7". I weighed in a 6'3", a couple weeks back on a jig. You know, so when I'm at the Upper Bay, I always have a jig on. You know, this lower tide, I like to use a 3/8. You know, right now we're in 6 foot of water. You know, most docks though we're gonna fish are only gonna be 3 and 4 foot, or maybe even 2 feet. So, you know, I like to use a 3/8. Doesn't get hung up as much on me in that low water, and I don't need the heavier weight to get down there in the current and whatnot. So also this time of year I like to use the net bait trailers, the tiny packet chunks. Really an awesome little chunk. They hold up. I mean, sometimes I have them on for weeks. They really hold up well. They're really tough. The fish don't seem to rip the pinchers off. You know, they also, you know, with the packet chunk on, it's a real small package. You know, I like a real small jig this time of year, real compact. You know, well, now they're on a little something, you know, 2 bites in a few minutes. I went ahead and dipped it. I like a little chartreuse on the tail, and it's garlic. You know, so we're gonna rig up a new one. It's just a little Zoom trick worm. You know, I believe it's actually called shaky head worm June bug, super salt plus, but ton coming to pack. They're cheap. You know, fish have trouble resisting them, even when it's tough. I'm just gonna wind it on there, you know, and pull it out a little ways after the head. And take the winder up on there, push it up over the bait holder there. You know, and then I give it a little spin. Spin it here. You know, and then I go ahead and put it up onto the hook. You know, you're just gonna kind of wind it on there a little bit so you hide it so it's a little more weedless. You know, but these worms are soft and when they bite it punctures well, as long as they're not grabbing the tail. You know, and then you kind of, you know, make sure it's sitting nice and even here. You know, it'll sit up real nice when you're bouncing along. You know, and that tail gets up in the water and dangles, and that little chartreuse I like in this murky water. You know, that helps it stand out a little bit more. But this June bug's awesome color in this muddy water. You know, and that fish came off in the boat. It was real important once I got him moving to keep him moving one direction, and I didn't want to go for the net. Then he might have gotten off waiting on that. So just use the momentum, keep him coming the same way, and get him in. A lot of times it'll hold him in just by hold him on by the momentum, and he'll come off in the boat or in the air coming into the boat. Further down the bay, you know, another shallow spot with some good structure. You know, we're gonna just check out a brush pile real quick, see if we can't get a nice bite. You know, some real nice fish down here. You know, water's still 49.5. It's not that different than a few miles back. Yeah, right now I'm just rubbing brush and structure. You know, you're just hoping to make them react. Hit the right piece, you know, right in front of them, make the crankbait do a little dance. Yeah, you know, normally on a brush pile like this, I don't like the, there he is. There he is. Little guy, nothing big, but a keeper. There's really quite a bit there. Really down there, really heavy. You know, 7-9, 50-degree water.
I'm here with Steve Von Bronten, the Bass College. We're here at the FLW BFL on the Upper Chesapeake Bay, and just wanted to show you guys the new Lew's rod that came in just a few weeks ago. So I got to fish with it in this tournament, and this is the Custom Speed Stick Light. Now this particular one is made for spinnerbait, but as you can see, I was using it with a bullet weight and a Texas rig soft plastic. Really versatile, super light. I mean, just absolutely light as a feather. And probably my favorite feature of it is the wind grip. Your hands are wet, etc. Just they stick to this grip like glue, and it's cushiony, so it's much softer than cork. Like I said, it doesn't have any of the slippery characteristics of the cork. And I really think these grips are just fantastic. It's probably going to be the wave of the future. And then this is the new or redone version of the Lew's Tournament Pro. It's a little bit lighter, still has same carbon fiber handle. They've done a few things where you can actually use your spool tension knob to mark what test line you have on your reel, because obviously it's real easy. You spool something up and you get, was that 10, 12 pound, you know, was that mono, was it carbon fiber? So they got a real neat thing there that they do with that. And then the other thing is this bait keeper. I don't know if you can see this here, but all you do is just folds right in when not in use, and then you just pop it out, take your hook, and boom, got instant bait keeper. Plus they also have one here at the bottom of the finger grip on the pistol grip there for the bait casting rod. But super smooth, the real light for 199 bucks. Tackle Warehouse. You can't beat it. Just go right onto the Bass College, click through the links to Tackle Warehouse, and go to Lou's Reels. You're really making some top-notch products, and I think you guys will really enjoy using them.
Yeah, and we really appreciate all the stuff that Lou's does for us, and everything that Tackle Warehouse does, and because we use most of our profits from our sales here at the Bass College for the kids, the military, fire, and the police. We give out free baits. We'll do donations to different organizations and help out with the events. So if you guys will stop into the site when you're getting ready to make a purchase, if you're going to purchase through Tackle Warehouse and pick up a Lou's or reel or rod or some sunline, we appreciate you just clicking through the link, because we use the profits. And if you'd like to donate the free baits that we give out, you can donate them right back to the kids yourself, or if you want to keep them for yourself, just follow the rules and we'll send you free baits with all your orders. So we appreciate everything you do, and Mike and I will be at the forums to answer any questions. You can ask Mike questions in the Ask a Pro Staff section, and we're all there live almost all the time, so stop in and see us at thebasscollege.com.